Iate Steve Pelletier Yinishe Maitish Kishni initially Billigana Bashashin Kimlachini Dashache Billigana Dashnoa. Finally, we're back. It's almost training camp time for the Detroit Pistons. October is just in what 3 days, I think. So they're recording this on Sunday, September 28th, 2025. And we're going to talk about the man, Cade Cunningham, because he is absolutely easily one of the best players in the NBA. MVP candidate perennially going forward. So let's get into it right about now. Andy, welcome back. How you feeling? Ready to talk about Cade Cunningham?
Yes, sir. I'm getting ready. I think the Pistons open practice is next week, so it's a week away. So I'm excited. We're finally here.
Yeah, maybe they'll actually run some scrimmages and do things this time, right?
That would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how good is Cade Cunningham? If somebody asked you that question, how would you answer it, Eddie?
Cade Cunningham is not only a franchise player, but he's one of the better franchise player in the NBA. So if you took all the teams, I would say you got to say he's top third in terms of best players in the league. So that's where I'd put him.
I'd put it more specifically. I think Cade is the eighth or ninth best player in the league. To me, it's Jokic number one, Giannis number two, Luca number three, SGA number four. Sorry, SGA. If you do it again next year, I think is in that conversation. Then he should go up to number two for sure. Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards number five, Jason Tatum number six, and then Steph Curry number seven, just for longevity, and then he's still like a weapon, and everybody fears Steph, right? And then after that, at eight, it starts to become the conversation of Cade Cunningham, Victor Wembanyama, maybe some Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton thrown in there. To me, number one, health concerns with Wembanyama, and I'll even concede if people want to say Wembanyama is better than Cade, just because I mean his size and his ability to everything that he can do and affect the basketball court on both ends. I mean, if he won, he could have won Defensive Player of the Year last year with even missing all those games because he still led the league in shot blocks even after he got hurt all that time. He was so far ahead of everybody. Um, Victor Wembanyama, that is. So if you want to say he's the eighth best player in the league already, I'm not going to stand in your way on that one. But I also believe Cade probably will have a bigger impact on winning just because he's in the East and it's an easier time there, as well as the roster around San Antonio and Wembanyama. They don't really have any wings. Not sure what the long term projection is, a big man and the whole De'Aaron Fox thing. Like, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, Cade is absolutely a top 10 player in the NBA, eighth or ninth best player, in my opinion. Two conglomeration of stats show that. Number one, there were only two players in the NBA last year that averaged over 25 points per game and over nine assists. Who are those two players, Andy?
Are we including Cade in that list? Like
Yep, Cade is one of them. Who's the other one?
Jokic?
Yep, Nikola Jokic and Cade Cunningham were the only two players last year to average 25 points per game or more and nine assists or more per game. To be fair, when I looked this up in previous years, because I was like, I'm sure Trey Young did that last year, but Trey Young didn't do that last year, but he has done it in previous years. So there's another guy that like consistently does that. So if you know, a lot of us don't like trade, myself included. It was, well, super productive, but obviously the defensive limitations and everything. He's not as a complete player as Jokic or Cade. But there's another stat. If you go into playoff annals, Andy, if you go into playoff records, there's only, let's see, one, two, three. There's only three confirmed. Well, technically four confirmed guys with this. There are two others that I just threw in here. I'm going to assume they did it because you'll hear why in a minute because of who they are. But there are only six players in NBA history that across the whole playoff run, like their entire playoff run, they averaged over 25 points per game, over eight rebounds, over eight assists, over one steal per game, over one block per game. Who are the six guys on that list?
How many assists?
Over eight. So over 25 points, over eight rebounds, over eight assists, over one block, over one steal per game across the whole playoff run.
Ah, that's I can't. That's a hard. Stat line.
Well, we're talking about one of them.
Did Westbrook ever do that?
Nope. I thought he would too. He barely missed it with the blocks. So
Huh. Because for some of the other guys that I could get those numbers, could they get that many assists, really? Because like Giannis wouldn't get that many assists.
oh yeah, I thought he would have made it, but yeah, he doesn't get that many assists, 8 assists, even though he's fine playmaker.
I mean, outside of like Jokic, like
Jokic is one of them. Jokic is one of them.
LeBron.
LeBron's one of them. That should be easy. Those two should be easy.
Yeah. Um. Oh,
I'll give you a hint. Think of the white version of LeBron.
Luca.
Not Luca. I was surprised. Luca didn't get it on the blocks, which I mean,
Okay.
like when you think about it, you're like, okay, yeah, defense, yeah, he's not getting those numbers. The other white, we're the older white version of LeBron.
I don't know.
Larry Bird. Larry Bird is one of them.
Oh yeah, Larry. What? Yeah, I mean, honestly, Larry was a monster. I don't
Oh
think
yeah, yeah.
enough people don't give him I just did it. I just didn't give him the credit he deserves.
Yeah, honestly, when I was looking at these stat lines again, over 25 points per game, over 8 rebounds, over 8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Bird was the first one that came to mind, along with LeBron and Jokic. I'm like, they have to have done it, just because they again all over the
Did,
place.
did Magic get the defensive
Magic
numbers?
did not do it. So think it. Let's before I give you the last two names, who I'm just assuming they did because that's the. I think it's the assists, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the assists on track back then. So so far the list is LeBron James, Larry Bird, Nikola Jokic. Names that do not appear on this list are Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, like Karl Malone, Kevin
Charles
Garnett,
Barkley.
Pierce, Charles Barkley. The other two that I did include on the list because they got the 2 rebounds and points part, and I think it's actually the steals and blocks they didn't track all the time. Will Chamberlain, like if you look at his 1966, 1967 playoff run, like he's just all over the place with all the other stats. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna assume you got the other ones, which were even now I'm thinking about it, I think it's steals and blocks, and it's like it's Wilt. Yeah, he's obviously gonna do that. So again, if anybody wants to nitpick, I'd put in Wilt in this 1966, 1967. I'm sure somebody can go in there and corroborate. And the other one is the big O, Oscar Robinson, in his first 3 playoffs run when he was at the Kansas City Royals. Again, another guy that was like all over the place. They don't track all of these specific stat categories, but he got him in the other ones. And just because we know of how much of a monster he and Wilt were all over the court on both sides, that I'm like, okay, I think those were the other two that probably got it, even though it's not listed there. Who's the sixth guy, Andy? Then NBA history in the whole playoff run, they scored over 25 points per game. They pulled in over 8 rebounds per game, got 8 or more assists, 1 steal, 1 block per game in their entire playoff run.
Cade Cunningham.
Cade Parker Cunningham. So there's only 6 people who've ever done this in NBA history: LeBron James, Larry Bird, Nikola Jokic, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robinson, and now Cade Cunningham. Anybody that wants to say, like, oh, maybe Halliburton, maybe Brunson, no. This is why I say Cade is better than them already. Brunson and Halliburton, for as great as they are, they do not impact the overall game like this on the glass and on defense. I mean, Cade was all over the place. And you and I remarked about this. And I know Chris LeBron, shout out Chris LeBron, marked on this when we talked over about him with the Knicks playoff series. It's like, man, he's getting a lot of shot blocks. He's playing tough D and really producing all over the court.
Well, we even won a couple regular season games because he blocked a shot at the end of the game. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Hawk game. I think it was the first Hawks game was the one where he got the block shot at the end of it. Your reaction to that, Andy?
I guess I didn't realize how great his season was last year and just how I mean, we know he's versatile and he fills up the box score, but that is a very, very small list of elite players. And we still think he has room to get better. Like this isn't the finalized version, like the best version of him yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I can already hear people, it's 6 games, it's a small sample size. I pulled this from everybody. Everybody, and even if they had a small sample size, quote unquote, of their first playoff run or a playoff run, nobody else did this except for these six guys. So I don't want to hear it. And it's the playoffs. Everything's marked up more like that. And how many dudes do we talk about where like, their first playoff run looked terrible? And it's like, no, man. Man, go look at Jordan's first playoff run. Go look at like John Stockton's for playoff run stuff. They're still good, but they didn't produce all over the place the way a K did. And even if they got bounced in like 4 to 7 games, they didn't score over 25 points per game. They didn't pull in over 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 block, 1 steal. Again, I don't want to hear the small sample size because
And
go look at
and
those
it's
records. There's only six dudes that's ever done it.
and it's not like the Knicks had weak wing defenders to D up on them. Like they have legitimate players, and it didn't make a difference.
Yeah. But you and I have hemmed and hawed about like, we don't think the Pistons can get past the 44 games that they won last year. The next step for the team should be 50 wins. Like that should be on the bulletin board. And, the goal of like, what do we think taking the next step is? 50 wins should be any team that takes this step forward. Logically, it's like, we don't want to just keep spinning the wheels in the mid 40s because some years that's not going to be good enough to be top five. And with a player as good as Cade is, like, no, he be him by himself should be able to get you past the 44 games, and you should be able to supplement him with other players around him to get him to 50 wins. But we're just going to focus on him first, Cade. That is, what do you think Cade can do to improve this season? Because I mean, that all that stellar and it's tough to critique a player like this that just does so much and does it so well and just makes everybody better.
Um, it's for me, it's easy because it's the same things we've talked about. One he has control over, which is improving his 3-point shooting, and then the other is going to be just his free throw shooting rate, getting to the line more, which he honestly has little control over that because he just doesn't get a whistle. And I mean, if you imagine him getting the whistle that like SGA gets, I mean, he'd be scoring at the same rate that SGA does. It's really the difference is at the free throw line when it comes to the scoring. So for me, probably the biggest thing is the 3-point shooting.
Yeah, I agree. It's the 3-point shooting because, like you said, the getting a better whistle, that's really up to the NBA and how much they want to rig that. Yeah, come find me, whatever. So the 3-point shooting is absolutely like, if I had any like influence over Cade or anybody that hears this as influence over Cade, you need to get his 3-point shot right. I know we talked a lot about the Knicks series of like, if Ivy played, they probably had a second scorer to help them win. Or like, oh, if Beef Stew played more, that might have like turned the tide with more of his defense. Like, oh, if they played a star more. You know what though? I'm saying now throw all that out. There's only one thing easily that if it was better, the Knicks would have gone home. And that's Cade's 3-point shot. He didn't even have one 3-point make per game. He shot an abysmal 17.9%. And he still murdered them and he still just, put them in a blender. They had no answer for him every game. Like they were close except for the end, the fourth quarter of that first game. But I mean, they fought tooth and nail. And if Cade is shooting even like 33% in that series, those games all came down to the wire, and those games were all decided, except for the first one, by like one score, right? Or like two scores. Again, if Cade's just averaging like two makes in those games, that's all that it takes. And that's the difference between them losing the first round and going on to the next round is just Cade's 3-point shot. So anybody, again, don't make that argument anymore about, beef stew, blah, blah, blah. No, if Cade just makes his threes, that's the only difference.
Yeah, no, I have no argument with that because the series was so close. And And that's why for the people who are excited about this team getting to 50 wins, I understand it because they finished the second half of the season last year. They were a better team for so many reasons. And then you saw how they played in the playoffs. So it should be momentum that carries forward, but you can't carry it forward. Every season is new. So that's where I'm not buying the 50 wins. I'd like to, but I'm not.
Yeah, and the other part of Cade improving his 3-point shot, I mean, if he just makes one more three a game, we're talking 29 points per game. He was at 26 last year, 26.1. And I mean, if the refs do give him even just like a teeny bit better whistle, 30 points per game is an easy, like this is easy money. But again, he doesn't have much control over that. Do you have any idea what Cade's free throw attempt rate has been across these 4 years, Andy?
Oh, it's way too low. I don't know what the number would be, but
22%. His first 2 years, it was under 20%. These last 2 years, it's been 23 and a half. And then last year was a career high, quote unquote, of 24.4%. Again, the most disrespected man in the NBA when it comes to the referees and just the way that he plays. He's not begging for contact. He's not faking contact. He's not driving like full bore like an Anthony Edwards into the teeth of the defense to where they have to scramble. He's like a boxer, picking his spots, getting in there, herky jerky, sometimes pull up in the mid range, sometimes do his like hook shot in there. It's unorthodox. And no matter what, though, there's no excuse to me why Cade shouldn't be getting at least 30% free throw attempt rate.
Mhm.
I don't know what other superstar in this league gets under 30% free throw attempt rate. And that's not even like us saying like, oh, blah blah blah, he's getting a bad whistle and all that. It's like, no, that's just fair. Like, go watch the tape again. Anybody, any basketball person, go watch the tape again. There's no reason this guy who gets so many shots in the paint and gets in there and takes contact. You see him go to the ground a lot and stuff. 25, really 25% free throw attempt rates, career high. Like, come on, man.
I mean, there's been times when he's gotten technicals just because I mean, it's just been so obvious that he's been getting hit and knocked down, and he's someone who he keeps his composure very well. And when he gets one of those texts, it's because like this is ridiculous. I mean, there's times when like he's gone up for dunks and gotten knocked down and there was no whistle, and it's like, come on.
Yeah, and JB's even got a bunch of texts for going bananas when that stuff happens. Which again, keep it up, coach, because we like seeing that stuff. And that is one of the things that would help turn the tide in getting a favorable whistle. It's like you can't keep doing this. And for a stupid NBA commissioner that talks about player safety and blah, 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 it's like, well, how about you put some player safety in here to not let this guy get knocked out, who's clearly one of the best players in the league. And again, career amazing playoff run to open it up. It's like you should want this guy to be more the forefront of your NBA, which is why they gave the Pistons so many national TV games this year. They obviously want him to be more the forefront of the NBA. It's like, come on, at least just be fair. We're not saying he needs to have a certain number of attempts every game. We're not saying like he should get superstar treatment, quote unquote. It's like, no, just when he's getting knocked around in the paint and when he gets thrown to the ground on these, attempts at the rim, like just blow those whistles, man. It's not that hard.
So, do you think do you think there's another leap for him statistically coming this season?
I don't know if leap is the right word. I think just another step forward towards 30 points per game. I do think that's, again, it's doable because he's just got to shoot a little bit better from three. He shot 35.6%, and only took six threes a game, which might sound like a lot, but his 2-point attempts were 14.8, something like that per game. Like he takes way more, over twice as many shots in the paint and, for mid range and stuff than he does from three. Part of it is it was hurt because of Ivy, and this is where I'm going to transition into a little bit of Ivy love. I think Ivy and his impact on Cade's shooting has gone completely un unheralded. So I don't know if anybody here has really done this yet, but I pulled Cade's games after Ivy went down. It was 41 games. In these 41 games after Ivy went down with injury, Cade scored 27.8 points per game, had 8.7 assists per game, 5.6 rebounds, 1.2 steals per game, 0.7 blocks, and then 4.4 turnovers. His shooting splits in these, Cade Cunningham shooting splits in these 41 games without Ivy was 53.1% from 2-point range, which is scorching hot, 34.4% from 3-point range, and then 87.1% from the free throw line. However, in these 41 games without Ivy, Cade only took 5.5 threes per game, which is down half an attempt from his season average. And he took 16 twos per game, my goodness, which is up 1.2 from his average. So that obviously shifted pretty good. You in the second half of the season, you want to guess what Cade's free throw attempts per game look like?
No, it was
It's 5.9 free throw attempts per game, which is up 0.6 attempts for the season averages. Again, it's like, come on, NBA, what are you doing? And looking at the tape, Ivy's creating probably like one or two more open looks per game for Cade. And then keeping Timmy and or Beasley on the court at all times also helped out. So this is again obviously hashtag start Duncan is only going to help out his case. But I mean, Cade just has to get up one more three per game, and we're in like 28 point per game territory, like I said before. I'm trying to find where the two, and then so what did it look like with Ivy? That's what the numbers look like without Ivy. Again, 34.4% is down like over a whole percentage point, and he's taking less threes. 29 games with Ivy last year, though. Cade was shooting 6.6 threes per game, and he was shooting 37.2% in those 29 games with Ivy. And with Ivy, Cade was scoring 23.8 points per game, pulling in 6.8 rebounds, had 9.7 assists. He was 48.7% from 2 point range and then 79.8% from the free throw line. I mean, you can see the makings in there because while even us were like, we don't know if Ivy's going to get to like 28 point per game or 20 point per game score. It's clear he does have an impact just with his speed and the fact that you do have to account for him on the court. And the big thing is Ivy generates easy catch and shoot looks for Cade, which obviously he did not get enough of last year. And that's probably the one extra three he can take and make every single game. I mean, he's probably getting like two more of those with Ivy out there and the time they share, like, at least one, so that's going to help out the percentage. And then you saw the 2 point percentage go from what I say was like 47, I think, with Ivy in there. 48.7% in those 29 games with Ivy, and then it shot up to 53.1 with him out of there. It's like, okay, you can see now that as the season went on, his numbers got better, both from two and from the free throw line. It's like, why can't we expect that also from the 3 point line when he has somebody else out there that has to be accounted for? Maybe it's not 37.1%, but 36%. Again, seems not like a leap, but an incremental step forward that's going to help his overall efficiency. That's going to make defenses scramble. And if that carries over in the playoffs, then it's like, this is how you get out of the first round.
so with Ivy out. I mean, Malik showed us more versatility in his scoring than I had seen from him. I mean, we knew he could shoot the three, but he did some other things. They also brought in Schroeder at the end of the year, but outside of that, there was never like who's the guy taking the pressure off of Cade to give Cade an open look. It it didn't happen. Like there really wasn't anyone to do that. And that's what makes this season so it could go so many ways because how does Ivy come back and look? And then how does he fit in with what they were doing? Because when he went out, there's a transition time, but for the second half of the season, they were a different team. And we thought they were going to be a different team anyway, just based on having that much time to get used to a new coach and how they do things. They should have been better than the first half, but they started without Asar and then they added Asar in, not to shift away from Ivy, but it'll just be interesting to see how the pieces fit.
No, I'm glad you brought us Sark because that's the other part of the puzzle is like Ivy is fine as a catch and shoot guy. You know what's going to help him and Kate out both is giving Asar the ball more and being able to use that athleticism and his ability to get in the paint and all that other stuff. It's like the makings are there. So, while we're still like, ooh, we don't want to pull the trigger of 50 wins, there's enough there. What would help out is if they did have a stretch big, I'm not going to lie, not just for Duran, but this is a Tobias criticism, although again, we love Tobias and everything he brought to the table. But if they had somebody that's job was just to shoot up threes and launch away, and oh my gosh, when I heard that PJ Washington extension announced, my heart broke a little bit. Because that's the exact kind of player they needed. That four spot is just somebody that fires away from three and is a very solid defender there, especially if you're going to try and keep Duran. Or, like we said before, Miles Turner, Nas Reed, if they were really after a stretch five, it's like that would make sense. Again, all of those things, rumblings, whatever you want to call them, make sense based off of who you have already. Where it's like, okay, look at Cade's 3 point when Ivy was there, the impact that had. Oh, we got a Sar who we can also give the ball into, and he can pass and get these guys easy looks too. Then you got Tobias, who at least in the playoffs like was just lights out shooting, right? And then Duran, and those are the two parts that you're like, okay, I can see why they were like, oh, let's throw some money in Nas Reed, or like, oh, let's sniff the market on a Miles Turner. So yeah, it's there. We don't know how it's going to turn out here, and obviously the Malik Beasley thing kind of messed up whatever it is that they wanted to do. Um, but yeah, that's where it is in terms of Cade and himself. Just looking at him, it's like I think the three ball is the number one priority, and then hopefully you get even a little bit better whistle because that puts you into 28 to 30 point per game easy.
Yeah, and I think those are things the free throws we've talked about are kind of out of his control. Because like even for me, for a couple seasons back, I thought there was things he could do to draw more whistles, but I think he's done some of that stuff and still just didn't get the whistle. So it's really out of his hand in that department. But the 3-point shooting, especially in the playoffs, that was the glaring thing. And also as he gets better with 3-point shooting and it changes how teams have to defend him, it's going to make everything else much easier for him.
Yeah, what I would like is for him to go more towards like 35% of his offense from three, because right now it's like hovering around 25, 29%. Let me look at those numbers again real quick. It's not as big of a part of his offense as a lot of other superstars. Yeah, 28.7% 3 point attempt rate is where it's hovered around. I'm like, man, and again, we understand part of it's like when you're the guy with the ball in your hands, you don't have a secondary creator that can get you easy threes, or you don't have a pick and roll partner who can help you get guys to pull away from you a little bit more and get those easy threes when guys duck under screens and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, man, like you just said, they have to defend you differently if you're knocking them down from three and taking them a little bit more. I mean, Anthony Edwards is a great example of this. Obviously, his jumper is way more picture perfect than a Cade. But I mean, half of Ant's power is that he just fires away from three. And it's like he hits them enough. It's not always the prettiest game at times, but that's how the rest of his game open up. Is like, we know he wants to be a bull in a china shop and run in here. We know he wants to get in here and give us some highlights, put us on a poster and stuff. But we can't sag off him ever because look at how many threes he puts up, and he's a good shooter. We just gotta throw our hands up and be like, all right, whatever. And I do think with the 3 point shot, it's got to be like that with Cade. I don't think he's going to have that much of a, hair trigger like an ant has. But again, like 30 to 35% of your shots coming from three, that makes a gigantic difference. Then to know, like, oh, yeah, he barely takes threes when you look at his overall shot diet. It's not even a third of his offense. So, yeah, just like sag off him, man.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also just him because he likes getting everyone involved, obviously, with all the assists that he gets. So I think sometimes he's hesitant just to put up some of those shots where he needs to, especially with the team he has around him. He needs to be a little a little more selfish.
Speaking of the team around him, I gave Ivy a little bit of love, but like I think the big reason why you and I hesitate to pull to like, oh, they're gonna win 50 games is we're not so sure about this team around him, right?
Yes. And the thing is it's not that we're if you have young guys, Ivy, Asar, Ron Holland, it's like if you're depending on them to take a step forward, for all young guys taking a step forward, like we had we had two horrible seasons where we were expecting young guys to take a step forward. And like, how did that work out for the Pistons? So it's asking a lot for young guys to do that. Now, Like Holland in summer league, he showed like flashes of, oh, he's putting up three. So we're not saying it can't be done, but that's banking a lot on young guys stepping up and producing.
Even when it comes to players this great, a couple guys I pulled, and I'm gonna get into like the whole team build and stuff too here, but a couple guys I pulled of like, okay, when did they get good and when did they like actually compete or win a title? Three guys came to mind. Number one, Kyrie Irving, just because another point guard, another guy selected number one overall, another guy who came into a really terrible situation. And while he was good, he wasn't like the alpha. So Kyrie, it took 4 years until they got good. And that was only because they got LeBron at that time. And then 5 years until they won the title. That was kind of accelerated though, because it's like we obviously don't have a LeBron coming back home, that we can hope for a year. The other one's Steph Curry. Again, would you believe 4 years until the team got good, and then in year six they won the title? And you know who that duplicates is Michael Jordan. Jordan, 4 years until he got good, the team got good, and then 6 years until they won the title. Guess what happened with Cade in year four? The team got good. I'm not going to say that they're going to win the title in the next 2 years, but with a player this good, that's your like prime window is like year six, really. And I think this is a bigger year than even what people have been thinking of, because I think this is the year that should tell them. And again, if anybody in their staff, player development, analytics, like they should have this stuff too and be like, we know Kate is this good. So if in year five, we're not actually taking a step towards where Kyrie, Curry, Jordan, like these kind of players are, like year six should be an indicator of like, we're serious. Maybe not title contention, but like we're a real serious threat. Like that, again, this year, if they don't show something else that shows like, yeah, we can be more than like this mid 40 scrappy team who can't make it out of the first round, then that's really where it should be like, we got Cade, but we know the rest of this isn't working.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about this like over a season ago where it looks like they signed contracts and lined things up in case they had to blow this thing up. They could. Um, they got better than they thought they were going to be, which is great because it's like, oh, okay, we can actually play. But still, this season will give us let us know like, okay, how good are we? Do we need to not blow things up in a bad way, but just blow things up where this isn't going to work out and get us much better than what we are with how the pieces fit. And it's a matter of them sending guys out and bringing guys in that make it fit and make it work.
Yeah, but I've gotten more and more frustrated as I've done research all summer looking at players and stuff at Trajan Langdon. But this isn't going to be a diss on him. This is me talking about needing to be patient with this process and looking at other teams that built an actual title team and the similarities and differences between what Trajan Langdon has and where those teams were. But the question to me, like if I had to ask Trajan Langdon one question is like, so is your plan just to do the same thing that Troy Weaver did, which is build around the players he drafted? You didn't draft them, he did. And I know you drafted Ron Holland, but he's not the guys that you're, saying like they need to take a step forward and whatever. And then I don't know how to quite articulate this point, but basically filling in the rest of the roster with veterans nobody else wanted. Right? Jeremy Grant, nobody wanted him at that price, even though he did end up working out. And guess what? Now nobody wants him anyway. It's the price that he's at. Sorry, Jeremy Grant. Kelly Olynyk, Mason Plumlee, Alec Burks, Kevin Knox. Now we have Tobias, Karis LeVert, even Malik Beasley. Even though he worked out, we forget nobody wanted him, and now we understand a little bit why nobody wanted him. But I mean, he was the 1 year, $6 million deal guy. It's like that was the same playbook as Troy Weaver. It's just you were better at identifying the guys that actually would work out and like had some fight still left in them, right? And committed to the culture of being tough, gritty nosed defender. And also for guys like KO and and Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee. It's like they came in at the very, beginning of the garbage truck. So it's like you can't expect them to like really turn things around. But the more I looked into it, the more I was like, man, Trajan Langdon's plan and Troy Weaver's plan so far and what we've been seeing isn't that far off. Am I off base to think that? First, again, this isn't a diss on Trajan because the whole thing is going to be about being patient. But that was my starting point.
So, okay, I I don't want to make this sound like I'm defending Troy Weaver at all because I was one of the people who was like, no, he's got to go. This is bad. But he wasn't the one who wanted to bring in Monty Williams. And I'm not saying that um a different coach would have fixed everything that Troy Weaver created, but that season was such a disaster. And Killian Hayes starting like everything. It was just it made no sense. Like it was so bad. Um and that cost a year. And the problem with having these young players lottery picks stacked up is you really can't waste a year because of their contract extensions when they start getting more expensive. And we lost a year to injury with Cade. We lost a year to injury with Ivy. And it's like that hurts a lot. And I think that's why I'm giving Trajan a pass in being patient because he really has to see how this fits, which I swear I've said that for like the last 4 years. Like we have to see how this fits, which is awful. But in some ways we do, and he didn't have the draft picks to trade to try and make a big move. And now he does. Like now that's available, that it's an option. I'm not saying he should, but it gives him the opportunity to do so. And I think that's where, because I know you're someone who, at least if I recall correctly, that you're like, if the right deal comes along, we got to trade someone, we got to pull the trigger, like we have to make that move. And I understand that because if he's too patient, it could end up being like this is the Troy Weaver path, and we this is not it. Like this is not going to get us where we need to go.
Yeah, because my whole like talk, if I could talk to Trajan, would be like, you know why Stephen A. Smith and those fools like, that have the national platform are like, well, we needed to talk about Troy Weaver now that these Pistons are really good. Because you haven't done anything for yourself yet. Like you're winning with Troy's guys. Like, that's always how it's gonna be. And where this frustration came from was like, isn't it normally the case that like when a new GM takes over, he inserts his guys and he starts to throw some of the old regime out? So that's when I started to dive into teams of like not only that of like, okay, um, successful rebuilds. And I mainly looked at most more recent teams, like Denver, Cleveland now, Indy, the Bucks, Houston, Minnesota, and then OKC, and then one older team, which I'll get to here in a minute, to see because I'm like, I know those teams that took a while, and I know their GMs came in and threw out what was before them. So I started off with Denver. Denver, it took 10 years to build a title, number one. Tim Connolly only made it to year 9. He didn't make it to the title team. He left right before that. And then Calvin Booth only lasted 2.3 quarters of a season, pretty much two seasons and 3 quarters. But I also was like, that one doesn't really apply either because they stumbled into Jokic. Even Tim Connolly admitted, like, we thought he was this good. We wouldn't have drafted him in the second round. So that one, I'm like, at the same time, it was like, okay, you could see Tim Connolly like kind of cycle through guys of like, we'll get a Paul Millsap, we'll have Will Barton here, we like Gary Harris, and then we're like, oh snap, Paul Millsap's like 45 years old. Let's get Jeremy Grant for a season, and then it worked out well. And they're like, oh man, we could have made noise, but we can't re-sign him. We don't have money. So that's when we got to trade for an Eric Gordon kind of thing. And then along the lines they draft. I mean, I went through too and looked at all these rosters as they currently are. Denver was the one. It's like, dude, like all of their rosters, like pretty much dudes that they drafted, like Jamal Murray. I mean, even though MTJ went out, they won a title with MPJ. They drafted him. And then the rest of their roster right now is filled out with like Christian Brown, Jalen Pickett. Shout out my guy, one of the first guys I argued for early on, as a sleeper. Um, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother even won them freaking playoff game last year, right? Um, So that it was like, okay, he did come in and clean house, but again, it was like they were a nothing team going nowhere at that point, and so it was a complete reset. They didn't have the first overall pick like the Pistons did. So the other one I looked at was Cleveland, like I said, and the post LeBron, Kobe Altman. We're in year 7 of it now. They haven't even made a conference finals. They went through like Ty Lue and the disaster of Coach B. Sorry, Coach B. Um, and that was another one too. Is like he kind of did it slowly of like turning it over. And again, it was one that I'm like, okay, be patient, but at the same time too, like that's such a different situation. Like LeBron leaving, right? And you know at that point you're like, okay, we're in for the long haul. Uh, so Indy was the one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to look at, and OKC is the other one, which I'm going to like tell you you're an idiot if you want to do that, or even think it's a possibility. But Indy is one that I think a lot of people would say like, oh, I could be like Indy, you know. But I'm like, you know what? Calvin Pritchard's been there for 12 years. And if you're just looking at this Halliburton team, this is year 4 of it. So they got to it quicker. And it also didn't apply because if you want to argue like, well, they got there in 4 years, it's like, yeah, because their front office has been together 12 years and they had 8 years before that of just like spinning the wheels and or just flat out failing, right? We're in year 12 of Giannis. So the Bucks I just looked at in terms of Giannis because that was another one similar to Jokic where they stumbled into him. They thought he'd be fine, but I don't think anybody thought he would turn into this. Giannis has gone through 2 front offices, 7 head coaches, and it took 5 years after his third year when he like took the turn to finally get to the title. And it was only until year 4 of Giannis that they realized, like, oh snap, we got to build a team around this guy when they were really hoping for like Jabari Parker and a different kind of thing. We're gonna be in year 6 of Raphael Stone in Houston. He went through maybe the worst coaching hire outside of Monty was Steven Silas. Like I think they had like what 2 years, 3 years with Steven Silas. And then they got the 52 wins last year. But guess what? Even though they're supposedly ahead of where the Pistons are in their rebuild, they have as many playoff series wins as we do, 0. And Gerald Wallace, Gerald Green. We always call him Gerald the Green just because we didn't like him with his whole rivalry with Cade. And Jed, and this is where I'm not so okay. Like Jalen Green is already gone there. So Cade won that battle. We're in year 5 of Anthony Edwards. He's been in 2 conference finals, but he's also gone through 3 front offices and 2-ish head coaches. Whatever the end of that Thibodeau and thing before Chris Finch took over, like he caught the tail end of that. And again, I can't believe they've gone through 3 front offices already. It was like Sachin Gupta, I forget the other guy, Gershon Rosas, and then finally they brought in Tim Connolly. And then Oklahoma City, like I said, if you think this is possible, and like, well, OKC did it. You know how long their GM has been there? It took Sam Presti 17 seasons to win a title. And that's after he drafted 3 Hall of Famers, 3 freaking MVPs, right? And if you want to just focus on this current rebuild, it took 5 seasons, pretty much hitting on every draft pick, too. Even undrafted free agents like Lou Dort, ridiculous hit. Like, I know there's guys like Jose Alvarado, um, and some other like Gary Payton II, like to hit on somebody who's that impactful in a Lou Dort. And then even then they won the title because they overpaid for Isaiah Hartenstein, who's like a big, big signing there. But again, 17 years, come on, people there. And the one super old team, and I thought of being in a similar situation to Cade is Dirk Nowitzki, who like it was clear very early on, the year 3, year 4, like, yo, this is a dude here, top 5, top 10 player in the NBA. It took Dirk 13 years to win a title. And he went through 2 front offices. Even we think of that Mavericks with Mark Cuban as like stable front office, and it was for one reason, and that's Nelly. If you don't know who that is, it's Don Nelson, legendary coach. I always remember, I think it was Jalen Brunson said Nelly always had more beers than Gary in the cooler whenever you go to practice. Super old school. But Nelly's son, Donnie, took over the front office there. So it's like, that's why the transition was smooth. And you don't really think about it. It's like Nelly was running the front office. And then his son, came along the way, learned the ropes and took it over. And Dirk went through three head coaches too there in that time. Avery Johnson, I forget who was before Avery Johnson, and then the legend himself, Rick Carlisle. So again, I still do think a lot of like, man, I think Trajan's still kind of leaning too much into what Troy Weaver's plan was. I really wish he would kind of bring in his guys instead. That whole exercise just told me like, yeah, it takes a while because especially the Tim Conley one, even in Minnesota, like they didn't come in and clean house initially. You pretty much kept everybody. He traded Gobert first, which I guess you could argue for. And then Indiana, it's like, yeah, they got good because they took 8 years to figure out what didn't work. Um, and even in ones that's kind of the same and a little bit more sped up than the Pistons in Houston, it's like they're kind of in the same spot. And then they had to trade for Kevin Durant too. Um, I think the big thing though, when I was looking at all these, is like, man, I guess you got to believe in the draft picks. But at the same time, I'm like, Tim Conley believed in his draft picks. Kelvin Pritchard believed in his draft picks. And the guys that have been there for quite a while, it's like they built up the draft capital and they built up the picks, like Raphael Stone also. So Trajan has those two things working against him, I think. It's just like probably stuck in between that rock and a hard place of like, maybe I do want to move on from these guys. I don't necessarily believe in them, but I have to in order for this to work out. And in first year, it did work pretty well. So we'll see where it goes from there. So I do think, again, like I said, year five is way more important than we think because we know Cade is already an all time great. But if they can't get closer to that 50 wins, even if they win 45 games, I think that's like a massive win in my opinion, because now you know what to expect. The opposition knows what to expect. They know what's coming. They know how to game plan for it. You also lost Malik Beasley along the way, which is another big blow. Like, what's your counterpunch going to be? It's going to be hard to make it back to those 44 wins. So if they can even improve one game, I think it shows, yes, they have a counterpunch. And like we said before, Cade should improve, and it just takes those threes. It just takes an Ivy being healthy to take a little bit of pressure off, and then you're taking that step forward.
So I I agree with you that this season will tell us, give us a good idea on where to go because I think one of the problems that Trajan had coming in, um, like we couldn't, the Pistons couldn't get people to pick up the phone just because of how bad that Monty Williams season was. That what value would you get from moving anybody? Nothing. Like really, what were you going to get trading away any of these players to bring in like the guys you may have wanted? Where right now, like even though the perception has changed dramatically. And I think if you're going to move one of these young players now, not that all of a sudden you're going to get all this value for them, but I think it's much better than had he moved them a year earlier when nobody's nobody's answering the phone to talk to this team and for these players, where I think the perception now is much, much different. And I think that's really, we're going to really find out, I think, at the trade deadline. I mean, obviously, it depends on how the season goes, but at the trade deadline, does he really plan on riding with these young guys longer term? Or is he really like, okay, this is what we have. This isn't good enough. We're going to move some things around. We're going to adjust some pieces and make some moves because it's it's really boring when you think about it, but you have the trade deadline and you have the off season. That's the only time a team improves. And if you don't make moves at those points, like you are stuck with what you have. And looking at free agency after this last season, it's like, no, they decided they are going to stick with what they have, which because they played so well, you're in a tough spot to move from these players right now. But you also have guys like Tobias, and it's like this is the end of his contract for us. So unless he's going to be a bench player on a team friendly deal in the future, it's like, yeah, you're looking to swap him out for something else. So, and again, we still haven't seen what this team looks like when you have Cade and Ivy and Lasar all playing together. And I think it's really tough to say that like if he would move someone right now, like for the talks about like Lowry Markkinen or whatever, it's like that is a gutsy move.
Yeah, and I do want to end on looking at OKC and Indiana's roster, the latest recent finals team, but you can do this with any super successful team, Denver, Minnesota, Boston. When they, I mean, obviously the Boston looks very different now, but go look at the title winning teams in the past like 5 or 6 years. Because I do think this is where it comes down to like, what do you believe in this Pistons roster? And the only reason I want to do this is because looking at Indiana and OKC, they're the thing that we say now is depth. Depth is the thing that gets you the title. Yeah, obviously you got to have the guy and maybe two guys, but I mean they're so deep, and every playoff team in the past 5 or 6 years has won it. And that's part of their thing is like they go what 9, 11 deep. But it's not just that. It's like they understand how to do it completely. And looking at these two rosters, there could be mirrors in the Pistons roster with this and what I'm going to bring up here, but I don't think so. So number one, when you look at I look just at the playoffs because I want to know like who was actually contributing to the playoffs. And for OKC, they had 11 guys that played at least like 130 minutes. And if you look at them, SGA number one, obviously major win for them in a trade. Jalen Williams, their draft pick that hit. Chet Holmgren, their draft pick that hit. Lou Dort, an undrafted free agent they hit. Alex Caruso, another trade that they hit. Isaiah Hartenstein, a free agent they had to overpay, and it's basically like the missing piece in their roster. Cason Wallace, a draft pick that they hit. Aaron Wiggins, a second round pick that they hit. Isaiah Joe, a guy that everybody else pretty much gave up on and couldn't find a spot for that they made work. Jalen Williams, second round draft pick that they hit. And then Kenrick Williams, another guy that other teams gave up on and didn't want, but they made work because he fits in their roster. Let's look at Indiana. Same thing, just looking at the playoff totals to see who actually contributed. Pascal Siakam, a trade that they won, big trade they won. Tyrese Halliburton, another big trade that they won. Miles Turner, guy that they drafted and they hit on. Benedict Mathurin. Oh, sorry, hang on. This is not the playoffs. Scratch that. Tyrese Halliburton, big trade that they won. Pascal Siakam, a big trade that they won. Andrew Nemhart, draft pick that they hit on. Miles Turner, draft pick that they hit on. Aaron Nesmith, a guy that everybody else gave up on that they gave a chance, fits in perfectly in the roster. Obi Toppin, a big trade that they won. TJ McConnell, another guy multiple teams gave up on that they made work. Benedict Mathurin, a draft pick that they hit on. Ben Shepherd, a draft pick that they hit on. Thomas Bryant, the guy that shouldn't have worked out but was ended up playing in the finals. And then Jarris Walker, a draft pick they hit on. You can look at the Pistons roster and see similarities in terms of like how it's constructed because I do think the best teams have that combination of everything I just said. Trades where they find the guys in trades that work perfectly and they hit on it, and it's like it doesn't matter what the price was, it works perfectly. I mean, look at the other guys, Minnesota, Rudy Gobert, how many draft picks they made. It still works. They've got to the Western Conference Finals, right? I mean, the 5 draft picks of Mikal Bridges, but they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they're taking their step forward there. Um, so yeah, with the Pistons, we had Cade, obviously draft pick that they had on Tobias, the veteran that everybody else gave up on, but it works here. Jalen Duren, obviously I'm not gonna say draft pick that he hit on, but most people would say draft pick that they hit on. Tim Hardaway Jr., another guy that didn't work out for other people, but they made work. Dennis Schroeder, I wouldn't argue he worked out, but other people might. Malik Beasley, another guy that didn't work out for other people. Asar Thompson, a draft pick that they hit on. And then Isaiah Stewart, although he got hurt in the playoffs, clearly is another draft pick that they hit on. And then after that, it's up in the air. Number one, it's too reliant still on guys from other places that it didn't work out from last year. And then when you update that to this roster this year, we still got Cade, we still got Tobias. Again, we're hoping Ivy works out. Duncan Robinson, you can probably pencil into like a trade that works out. And then you're just hoping like Asar takes a step forward as the draft pick to hit. Stu continues to be an elite defender. And where it falls apart to me is like, okay, you're relying on Karras now. And I think a lot of those other teams where they got the veteran that everybody else gave up on, they worked perfectly in that situation. Again, think in Minnesota like Mike Conley. Think Dante DiVincenzo there in Minnesota as well, right? Whereas all the guys I named in Indiana, like Aaron Nesmith, TJ McConnell, and then in OKC, it's like Isaiah Joe, Keener Williams. I'm like, man, I think this is where Malik is probably going to hurt them the most because it seems like they really hit on him. They really got like the Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith at the very minimum type of impact dude. And that's why to me, I'm like, man, it's hard to say you can get to 50 wins because you lose that when that's so hard to find. And then you bring in Karras, which again, it depends on your perspective on this team of like, you could argue that, oh, he's going to be the guy that like other teams gave up on, but he works perfect for them to be determined. But as we've laid out before with like his 3-point shot and lack of defense, it's like, man, I don't know. And again, there's just too much of a reliance on the guys that didn't work out for everybody else from last year's roster and then hitting on our draft picks. If you noticed, there weren't too many like guys at the top of the list of both Indiana and OKC of like, hey, we drafted this guy and we really hit on him. No offense to Jalen Williams, J Dub. No offense to Chet Holmgren. No offense to Nemhart, and all those other guys that got drafted, and Miles Turner by the Pacers. I mean, Jokic, Giannis, probably the best examples of like dudes that really, really, really hit on, and we drafted them. Again, the makings are there. I think Trajan's trying to at least. Whether or not he's consciously, you know, doing it the same way as everybody else, like it's there. But my fear is that it's either over reliance on, like I said, Troy's guys already of like, no, these guys have to hit. And the hey, let's bring in this dude that didn't work out for everybody because the trades haven't happened yet. That's the big part that's missing right now is like, again, it's clear every team, Minnesota, even Denver with Aaron Gordon, right? LA with all their other dudes. I mean, Clippers have probably shown themselves now, but even the Lakers with Luca, every team has a major guy they got via trade. Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell, right? I think that's the missing component right now. Not to say that it has to happen, but I don't know, man. Boston got over the hump by getting Porzingis and Drew Holiday, right? It just seems like I don't know that he'll pull the trigger in year 5, but in year 6, I think if there's not a trade, like a major trade by year 6, I don't know, man. It seems like everybody else is able to do it, and that's what really helps them get over the hump and take them further. When there's a pattern, you got to recognize the pattern, man.
I I agree with that. I think um the teams that end up, winning it, they they make a trade to get the piece that really fits, and then sometimes they're still short, and then they overpay the player or they roll the dice on a player, and if it works out, they win a championship, and if it doesn't, they don't. Um, but like, cause like Boston, like when they went with Porzingis, and like they were rolling the dice, but it worked. And so I think it will be interesting to see if he's going to be patient or if he's going to be willing to roll the dice. And then, like you said, these aren't his guys. He didn't draft them. And how long is he going to be willing to stay with them before he's like, I want to go into a different direction? And then also you have to look at, will there be other opportunities that open up based on like the salary cap where teams, and for me, that's the one area that I'm a little disappointed that we didn't shake things up is this is a window where teams have to get off money, and we had a cap situation where it's like we could try and get some of these players and we didn't get anything. And it's like that would have been an area. Um who was it was Memphis. Memphis now
Marcus
he's
Smart.
thank you. Yes. It was Memphis when they got off Marcus Smart, who ended up getting bought out. Now he's like with the Lakers, where it's like that would have been a situation where I thought, because we talked about that and like why didn't the Pistons get in on that, like that type of situation. So it will be interesting to see if he just manages what Troy Weaver did, or if he's like, I believe that I can do this better and find my own guys. Because right now, I think not trading away the young guys was the smartest approach. Um, but once you see what you have to decide, like, nope, I'm ready to move on from these guys. We're not attached to them forever. And, it's time to make that move.
Yeah, the cap space, like in year one, not renting it out and not that might be to me the biggest misstep. And we'll see because again, it's only a second year Trajan Langdon. But to me, it does feel like the biggest misstep, and I just can't help but feel like it's going to come back to bite them. Is like instead of paying Tobias 26 million, maybe you should have done what a lot of these other teams did, and like, okay, we'll take your bad money, just give us an extra pick, because that's the biggest part that the Pistons are still lagging behind. And even though you say like he has the picks now, it's to open up. It's like yeah, but they're all his. So the Houston's, Minnesota, New York, like they were able to get picks from other people while running their cap space out and then unload it there along with some of their own as well. So to me, that we'll see again. We'll see in time what happens if that ends up being the case. But I can't help but feel like it is a little bit of a misstep. And my biggest fear is that this Pistons team ends up being the Minnesota Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett, where like the best you can do after it's all said and done is a Latrell Sprewell nobody else wants, and a Sam Cassell who's on the downside of his career. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. They both did very good in Minnesota. Sam Cassell, the OG, did great there. But it's like, it wasn't enough, man. That's why you kept running into the buzzsaw Laker team and they just squashed you every time. That's why you couldn't get past the Kings sometimes since they just had much more depth and you couldn't keep up with that pace with the older team around KG. And then like Wally Zerbiak was your best draft pick. But I mean, also part of that is like they're cursed with Stephon Marbury and that whole shenanigans. They also did the stupid Joe Smith deal that took away 5 draft picks from them because they were like, we'll sign this for you, do it later, and then they documented it all, you know, snitched on themselves, right? So that stuff hopefully doesn't happen. If that does happen, then Trajan Langdon, I hope we burn you at the stake in Detroit, kind of thing. But you know what I mean, like because it's like, okay, your inactivity could lead to something like this, where at the end of it, it's like nobody really wants to trade for these guys. We already see how restricted free agency is going right now. If they don't produce as, you want them to be a second scorer, they're not taking a step forward on defense. It's like, you don't want to pay them and then nobody else will either. And it's like, okay, we're stuck in this weird restricted free agency limbo. And then when you do re-sign them, like, do you sign them to a deal that basically makes them untradeable? Or if they do hit, like, okay, now you're going to have to sign them to a max. And like we said before, if one of them signs to the max, that's like 41, 42 million. And it's like, all right, how do you build out the rest of the roster when we just listed off 2 teams that run 11 deep? We're just hoping to get to like 8.
I I I think it's weird, but like two players that for me are going to be important this season to watch are Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert, because if and I think he's going to have a good season. If Duncan Robinson has a great season shooting the ball after what Cade did for Malik, I think you'll see other people who are kind of like, I want to get a season in with Cade because he can get me paid, because he will get the ball moving. I will get open shots. I I would love to do that. And I think he can totally do that. And then for me, Karis LeVert, it's like you have to show to me why Langdon and JB Bickerstaff were so high on making you the first thing we did in free agency. Like it has to be a good fit for a role that I don't even understand right now, because otherwise I'm going to have so many question marks with like, why Why was this the first move? I don't get it at all. So please prove me wrong by having a role and making a difference that I just don't see right now.
Yeah, who we don't have to wonder about is Cade Parker Cunningham, like I said before. Remember, only six guys in NBA history in the playoffs, over entire playoff run, have scored over 25 points per game, pulled in over 8 rebounds, dished out more than 8 assists per game, had more than one steal, more than one block per game. That was LeBron James. That was Nikola Jokic, Larry Bird, Will Chamberlain, Oscar Robinson, and now Cade Cunningham. Everybody, Cade Cunningham is going to be in the MVP conversation for quite a bit of time. Originally, I wanted to title this podcast Cade Will Win MVP eventually, or like Cade Cunningham's MVP campaign starts now. But then I saw Jack Kelly, shout out Jack, and Sean Murphy from Half Court, shout out to those guys. They did podcasts saying that same thing. And we agree with them, not taking anything away from them. Go check out those podcasts and YouTube shows as well. But we didn't want to say exactly the same thing because we all know Cade is great. Andy, do you have anything to say before we get out of here?
I'm excited for open practice 1 week from now. I'm happy to see some basketball. I'm excited.
Pistons put Cade on ice and Asar everywhere. With all these injuries going around, don't make him do too much. Just chill out, man. You get to the season, don't do anything bonkers. Please, please, no more injuries. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. We'll catch you next time. We'll go on it.